Hey everybody, how's it going? Today I just wanted to talk about my experience with Trials of Reckoning last week and what it was like for me to chase the top 100 scores, both total high score and total score, to try to get a title. So, right off the bat, what I realized is that chasing the top 100 is a completely different mode. It's a lot more hardcore, but it can also be a lot more fun. But I kind of realized that for myself personally, going for both the top score and the top high score was a mistake. I shouldn't have done both on the first run. I should probably have tried to do one or the other. But that being said, let me just talk a little bit about why it's so different. So normally, yes, I do actually go pretty hard for Trials of Reckoning. The last few times I did the same thing. I used all my potions, all my large potions. I just didn't have all the cards. I think I had enough units, but I didn't have all the cards. So I didn't necessarily try to seriously go for one of the top 100 scores. Um, what I've realized that part of the difference is that not only do you need a good team of the 5 units, but you also need different teams to be able to get a high score on each map. You need different combinations of things. You need like agility tuning, like that kind of stuff. And then you also need to sort of just make it as efficient as possible. So normally what I would do is I would try to just, kind of go for a high score on each map. I wouldn't necessarily try to push top 100, just whatever high score I can get without having to change my stuff around too much. I started to realize for total high score that you really need to maximize each unit. So for example, if you go into the the bonus units, you need to be able to use at least every unit from one element. So that was definitely a lot of fun to kind of try to figure that stuff out. And special shot, I feel like the unit that I enjoyed using the most here was Gargus, because there was a time that things just clicked for me and I was just like, oh, Gargus, I need Gargus for this. And so I really enjoyed being able to use Gargus. Certain units here also, like Elzarel, Charlotte. I mean, Charlotte probably wasn't as good, but like Hyo, for example, like those units are kind of not limited. So to me, it was like really fun to be able to tap into those units and kind of just, oh, I finally get to use them. But for me personally, when I had, I don't have Dialdo. Raph is kind of another one I know most people won't have, or not most people, but some people won't have. And Shadowlinks is another one. So Shadowlinks personally ended up being an amazing investment because I used her for guild raid last time. But if I wouldn't have had her, I would have been so pissed because I didn't have Kadaj either. So that to me became another factor. Well, yes, I did like using like Gargus. I really enjoyed using him. Especially like with cast time and kind of figuring that stuff out. I really enjoyed doing that. But like not having some of these units definitely did become a detriment. So for example, I had Hyo, but I didn't have Sephiroth. There was one level where I very clearly needed 2 fire units, but I couldn't do it because I didn't have Sephiroth. And so my score actually suffered quite a bit because of that, because that specifically was hard 4. And that was one of the levels where you kind of needed to do that every day to kind of get extra tickets. Aside from that, though, I feel like that was a lot of fun to kind of use all the different units, regardless of whether I didn't have certain units. Okay, so yeah, that was something you had to do, is you really had to fine tune your team to kind of get everything going. I enjoyed that, but then I also didn't enjoy that. I'll get into that a little bit later. So the other thing about this is like, yeah, I was using my XL potions that I had saved up just for this kind of event situation. But then I was like, oh, you know what? I'll just throw in some Viz refreshes here and there. That'll help get me to the top, right? So what I wasn't realizing is that when it comes to Viz refreshes, there's actually 24 you get in a day. And that's at my royal rank. I know that there's people above me in royal rank, so they're definitely getting more. And so these actually count a lot. So yeah, these count a lot because it's a full whatever your total energy is. And so another thing that clicked for me was like, wait, I'm not fully caught up on stories, so I'm not going to be maximizing this as much as possible. And so another thing that I realized is, so this right now is 50. So 50 times 10 is like 1,000 already, or that's 500 already. So 20 is around 1,000. So you're spending more than 1,000 viz per day trying to do this, right? And more if you have a higher royal rank. But then my friend was telling me, like, it's not 50. Like, once you use like 2 or 3, it becomes 100 and then more. So you're using a serious amount of viz to kind of try to compete with these people. And once I started realizing that, I was like, this is not really what I signed up for. Like, yes, I do have the viz right now. I have been kind of building up the viz, but I kind of didn't want to invest my viz because I wanted to save for future stuff. So part of the thing with investing viz is that you're not really getting viz back. Even if you get the highest, I think it's in guild, even if you get that number 1 spot, so that's guild, so that doesn't even depend on you. So even if you get that number 1 spot, that is in no way paying you back for what you spent. So you're really, yeah, you are getting some of it back, but you're really, the ranking is what's important, right? So like, you're really committing to the rank if that's what you're doing. You don't really, I mean, it's nice to get it back, but you're not really concerned about getting any kind of reward back for what you did. The rewards are not the greatest. I mean, it's cool to get these XL things. Like I was actually wondering where do you get these, but that's where they are. So it's cool to actually get that, but I mean, come on. Like, that's not really worth it as someone that's not like super willing to do everything. So that's kind of what ended up stopping me from like really going for that total score. So yeah, what I found really was that the total high score was the actual fun part. So if we go into some of these screenshots that I took over the week, so this one specifically is when I did break into the top 100 of total score, and I'm kind of just happy that I did that, right? That's already enough of a victory for me. Like, I got to the top 100. So at that point I was kind of more motivated to kind of go for it, but like I said, viz and all that stuff, I was not really willing to invest it. I think this was on day 6, which was Monday. I managed to make it to 96. I actually have a screenshot with 95 coming up. So again, this to me is proving to myself like, hey, you know, I did the best that I could. Probably not the best that I could, but I was able to compete. I kind of understand what's going on. So to me, it's more a matter of like dedicating the time and the effort to being able to do it, more so than if I myself have the skill to do it. So I thought personally that was a nice little achievement to go for. So another part of this that I really enjoyed is that they do actually break out the high scores per level, so you can actually see where you're doing. So in this case, I'm ranked 69. So 69, I'm a 69 god here. I'm a fan if you get that reference. But I did enjoy being able to see this because you can see like, okay, you know, I knew that my score wasn't high in certain levels, but I at least knew that I was in the top 100 per level. So, you know, certain levels I did better than 69, 52, 67, right? So I wanted to screenshot all of these and have, you know, each one, but the screenshot doesn't show what level it is, like normal 1 or whatever. I was going to try to keep a mental note in my mind, but I just didn't. I forgot to kind of just do it. But I really enjoyed being able to see your rank because you can kind of just try to get rank 100 on each level and then kind of just work on whatever your worst level is, right? What ended up happening is that the 2 key levels that I couldn't get were hard 4 and the hard boss battle. I saw that people's scores were just like so much higher than mine's. So like that kind of made me lose a lot of motivation. And I know like it's not just a matter of units, it's sort of a matter of like working together with other people within your guild and, you know, other people on Discords and stuff like that. I didn't necessarily want to do that for this one because I didn't want to just show up to different Discords and be like, "Yo, what are people doing?" So I kind of just went with some of my friends in my guild. Uh, Unfortunately, I only had like two people that I was really talking to. So like in terms of strategy, we weren't really strategizing all that much. So I feel like that was a little bit of a disadvantage, and that would have, like, for me to do it on my own, that would have been a lot more work to try to figure stuff out on my own. But I am super proud of myself for the stuff that I did figure out. Kind of just, there's so many things involved, like chains and weaknesses, type weaknesses, elemental weaknesses, the speed, the turns that you take, the overkill damage, stuff like that. You guys know all the stuff, but it it was a lot. So I did enjoy doing it, and I did, where I did succeed, I did enjoy that. But there was times where I did what I thought was the absolute maximum that I could do, and I was like nowhere near any of the top scorers. And that was kind of a little. It made it harder for me. It's just unmotivating for me to kind of, when I got to that point, right? So I did enjoy kind of just like that kind of compromise. You had to like compromise, like, hey, I didn't have Dialdo, so like I had to figure out a different way to do it. And sometimes it did work, but there were some key battles that I just couldn't do, so it kind of sucked that I couldn't really do that kind of stuff. So yeah. I have my notes here, but I'm kind of going out of order, so I kind of already said some of the stuff. So yeah, what ended up happening is the second to last day, I was doing great. I was like so happy, and then I was ready mentally to go for it on the next day, but I was just like burnt out, because not only because of the game itself, but just because of other personal factors, I guess. I had the whole day on Tuesday, and I just so part of the reason too is just managing the teams. So I had like 4 different slots of teams that I had, but then like keeping track of it in my mind, it was just annoying. And actually, I think on the Monday, WOTV Calc was down, so I couldn't. It wasn't down, but just the section with the quest was down, so I couldn't figure out how to do it efficiently. So I started writing it out myself, and it was just like, I was just like, forget it. I just don't want to do it. I just didn't want to do it at that point, so I just kind of gave up. And the part that made me give up was not just like switching the teams and everything, but then sort of tuning the sub jobs, tuning the support skills and stuff like that. The equipment is one thing, because that's fine, you can save it on teams, but since it's all quest, and you can't really switch between quest, duel, and guild battle, and all that stuff, since it was all in quest. Like, for example, Cloud, right? Cloud has an ability where he has a move +1 and agility up, but there was times where I wouldn't want to use him, but I would still want to use him, but not, I wouldn't want him to go multiple turns. So just going back between adjusting all those settings, it was just too much for me, and I just decided, you know what, I give up. I'm just not going to do it. I wanted to do it for sure, but I just didn't want to do it, So because of that, I think that's where I gave up, and that's where I just couldn't do it, right? So kind of just a couple of things that happened is, on the last day, I had my boss battles farming, and I was like, oh, 1 hour to go, no problem. But I actually just fell asleep kind of at the end. So that was around like midnight, and I fell asleep, and I woke up at like 3:30 a.m. I was like, oh, let me jump on. And then I was like, oh, nope, maintenance is up. So I couldn't do anything at that point. But I could have pushed my total score a little bit higher, but honestly, it wouldn't have been worth it even if I did, because I probably wouldn't even have broken into the top 200. All right, what else? But no, honestly, now that I did this, I understand why people quit this game, because it wasn't enough for me to pull for all the vision cards. It wouldn't have even been enough for me to pull for Kadaj and Sephiroth. I'm thinking of kind of like the maximum potential, right? I'm sure there's people in the top 100 that didn't have everything, but there's nowhere for me to know, right? So, like, I would have had to pull for Dialdo. Was I missing anyone else? No, I think I had in terms of the limited unit, but if I was somebody else, I would have had to pull for Wrath and Shadowlinks. So I totally understand why people decide to quit this game, because you need to have all that stuff and you kind of need to pre-plan it, and like there's no way for you to know, and like this and this and this. So that's one factor. And then the other factor is just the stress of it. Like, the way that I play this game, I try to just play stress free. I mean, there is some stress. I do take some stress, but for me, like, I don't want to stress myself more to a level where I'm going to burn myself out. I don't want to stress myself more than I enjoy what I'm doing. So maybe I'll definitely try to revisit this in the future, and definitely maybe try to do one at a time and then try to do two at a time. But I just was not ready for the amount of stress that this would bring me. And honestly, I would rather enjoy the game more than the stress, right? So I'm realizing that there's people that will stress themselves out and will burn themselves out and end up quitting the game because of stuff like this. And I totally understand why people will do this. I enjoy going hard in certain things of this game, but like, this game is always asking so much of us. So I prefer not to go hard on everything. Kudos to the people who do go hard on everything always. Like, I don't understand how people do it, but hey. All in all though, like, my opinion of Trials of Reckoning, it's still my second favorite PvE content, or my second favorite content in the game. My favorite being Guild Raid. I feel like there's more a chance for you to shine individually and sort of within your tribe, more so than against everybody else. Like, yeah, there's competition against everyone else, but the way it's set up, it kind of shows you your tribe and kind of how you're doing within your guild. So it kind of gives you a chance to kind of just prove yourself within the guild or among your friends. So I kind of feel like that, to me, is a little bit more enjoyable as my favorite mode. But now that I've kind of gone for this challenge, I do see this as an enjoyable challenge that I can partake in whenever I have the chance.